Hi, and welcome everyone to my Venus series. Down below there will be a link to my book, of course, and as well as skipping towards the actual sign that I'm going to be talking about if you don't want to listen to this beginning segment, which I am going to go in a little bit deeper than what I think a lot of astrologers out there on YouTube are going to be tapping into. There's going to be a little bit more counseling based interwoven in the beginning section of what Venus is, as well as how can we kind of redefine the culture in at least the Western world. I don't know about anywhere else, as it is kind of blah, and I think we need a little bit of a cultural change. What are our belief systems when it comes to dating and getting somebody to fall in love with us, because you can't actually get someone to fall in love with you or anything like that necessarily. So depending on who you, the viewer, are, because I don't actually know who you are and what you struggle with, I'm going to tap in a little bit with a little bit more counseling in there, since I do have a master's in mental health counseling and I love relationships, as I am a Libra rising, Libra South Node in the first house. So this is my book. You can get it on Amazon. The link will be down below. It's also in the description box in my channel description page. It is like a personal story. You can learn a lot about it, or learn something about it from reading. Of course, you're going to learn about it if you read it. But if you like relationships, learning from heartbreak, learning from different encounters, how we deal with one another, because that is all Venusian, Venus energy is relationships, self-value, self-worth, and money. What do we attract? And so if you read that book, it's not going to solve your problems or anything like that, but you might feel heard. There might be something in there that may relate to you or someone that you feel close to, as well as kind of learning how to empathize and be more compassionate of other people as well as yourself, because if you want the world to be a better place, then you have to understand that nobody is exactly like you, and that's a good thing, because otherwise the world would be really boring, and each individual brings their own authentic, creative, cool, weird person, whatever, to the mix, so we all can learn and grow. Some other books, because I'm just going to be this type of person, even though I'm not the writer of these books. But if you haven't already heard of or read these books before, these can be things that you can learn from if you're struggling in relationships, or just, you're on a self-help journey, self-improvement journey, self-awareness journey. If you've just kind of started and astrology was just appealing to you, that is one way of doing it. These are other books that I just grabbed off of my bookshelf, and so if you haven't heard of the 5 love languages, it's very popular. If you haven't read it already, I think there is a part 2. Reading this, getting the examples of what the writer, Gary Chapman, I'm always bad with names, basically, we have 5 love languages. You can say in astrology, the Venus signs in the 12 zodiac signs are 12 zodiac love languages. It's just a little bit different in how we kind of interpret it, or another level of stuff. So words of affirmation, acts of service, receiving gifts, quality time, physical touch, and everyone has, their kind of go-to with that. If you haven't read that, this one I haven't read in a long time, so it's, it's a very short read, but why Why Am I Afraid to Tell You Who I Am by John Powell. I have to do it like this. But if that is interesting to you, I'm going to try and link them down below so it's easy access. So yeah, but that's a good, very fast, easy read. I've read it one time. It probably was common sense to me, so I don't remember it as much. This was one of the first books I was suggested from somebody during my terrible relationship, which is in here. The biggest lesson of my entire life was that relationship that really woke me up to what the hell I was doing also. Even though I wasn't doing anything necessarily bad or wrong, I was self-defeating in an unconscious sense, and so realizing, maybe you'll figure this out during the bubble time of your first Saturn return, which that was happening to me, as well as the Pluto in Capricorn transit, which I have a stellium in Capricorn in my 4th house. It's a very emotional house of emotions and family trauma. The foundations of childhood is in the 4th house. So it made me really unravel, and all this stuff kind of brought up to the surface. So maybe, in a creative way of how I wrote the book through stories, maybe you can come up, or certain things will light up in your head, if you read it. Someone had suggested this book to me, Get Out of Your Own Way, which for me, it made me realize 70% of this book was my partner at the time, not necessarily me. And it was making me very angry and got me in my critical Virgo in 12th house mode of criticizing and trying to get somebody else to fit what I wanted, which you can't do. You can't do it. You can't force anyone who's not ready to fit in your mold. You can't do it, even though you have an ideal picture of we're going to be the perfect couple, or we get along so well, or it just flows, but there's so much more to relationships than it just kind of just going with the flow and expecting it to work out in the long run. You can be attracted to each other in the beginning. It can be fun. You can busy yourself with all the entertainment stuff, which is, the dating, the Leo 5th house stuff. But at some point, someone, needs to be able to speak up and talk about some serious stuff, or be able to do that in the first place, early on. And that takes a lot of self-worth, self-knowing. Do you even know who in the world are you? Who are you? What you like, what you don't like, what can you tolerate, what can you not tolerate, what are deal breakers? Even if the person looks the way that you're attracted to, or has the perfect resume, has a job that is very secure, and they can take care of themselves, or they can take care of themselves and you, and you're like, oh, I need to be with this person. I'm going to morph myself in order to fit the mold of the person that I like, even though that is not authentic to myself. Later on down the road, if you are not authentic to yourself and what you truly wanted, even though you were disillusioned in the beginning by the romance and the entertainment and what could be, you might end up feeling kind of sad and lonely, or this is not what I want. And then, you run into problems, or things get more complicated after you already get married or you have kids, and it's a lot harder, So changing the culture of, how we approach relationships and making that more of a popular norm. That's the cool thing to do. That is just what people they tend to do that now, instead of the old way, swiping 1 million times on a dating app and kind of looking down the resume list and their little picture and saying, no, yes, so quickly, and overriding so many other things, you know, can really make you miss out on really good relationships. You know, or not even trying. And then we all become more separate and more alone and more victim mentality and blah, blah, blah. So I wrote down, you know, a bunch of stuff about what Venus kind of rules, because I tend to kind of go all over the place. Usually in past videos, I do that, or I blank out because I have Chiron and Gemini, and I'm always a work in progress with my Chiron and Saturn. And I have a playlist down below on my channel. If you click my name down below, you'll see a list of videos, shorts, playlists, lives, blah, blah, blah. And you can click on playlists, and it's whatever I have put up so far is organized there if you want to check out other videos to help you, you know. Otherwise, why am I doing this? You know, I'll just help myself. I'm not going to help you. I don't know who you are, you know. But, you know, I love doing this. I do it anyway at work, you know, with my coworkers. They come to me for advice all the time, or, you know, I notice things about them that they need to work on. And sometimes they're not always ready or completely aware to work on their things. And that's fine. I see them all as my little children, even though a lot of them are older than me, or some people, I don't know, whatever. So basically, Venus rules charm and magnetism, just kind of what naturally kind of gravitates towards you, as well as what you may be giving off to other people. Remember that Venus, if you're new to astrology, Venus rules 2 zodiac signs. It is the ruler of Taurus, which mainly rules our self-worth, our self-value, and our personal finances, as well as Venus rules Libra. Libra is the relationship house. It rules other people, because you're not thinking about yourself anymore when you're in a relationship. You're kind of thinking about yourself too, but if you want a relationship that is harmonious, you do have to consider the other person. Otherwise, why are you in a relationship with another person? Just be in a relationship with yourself, you know? So in order to create a harmonious relationship, I forgot what I'm talking about. See, this happens to me all the time. In order to create a harmonious relationship, you have to be what Libra stuff, diplomatic, kind of know when to kind of back off and not be so assertive. You know, sometimes there's someone who is going to get their way, you know, and there's going to be someone who might not get their way as much at times, but hopefully it's to a point where it's not a deal breaker, or it's not damaging their relationship or hurting one another. It's just sometimes, you know, things are going to favor someone else. You know, like if one partner loves football and the other person hates football, and they love going to the museum and vice versa, they're going to share in, you know, well, I don't know if they will share, but hopefully you're going to kind of compromise and say, like, I know that you love football, even though I don't really care about football, and I will go, you know, to the games or whatever because you love it. But I would appreciate it if you didn't have football playing 24 hours a day. You know, like sometimes I want to watch my shows too, if you're able to take a break, you know, or whatever the two parties, or multiple. Some people are polyamorous, you know, or do very unconventional things. If you're able to be upfront, honest, and vulnerable with what you actually want and what are you willing to work with, it might be hard because you're gonna be weeding out a lot of people who don't fit that box, you know. But if you know for certain this is what you like and don't like, you know who you are, and you've kind of gone through a lot of tests already or relationships to figure that out, you know, or give it a try at least, then you won't know. I always forget what. Venus also rules our aesthetic taste. What is our style, interest in art, beauty, personal aesthetics, the aesthetics of a person. Like Venus in Aries is going to most likely like someone who they have an attractive body that kind of looks sporty, for an example. Venus also rules our romantic desire, or the kind of partners we tend to gravitate to. Venus is pleasure. Taurus is all about pleasure seeking. Food is pleasurable. Anyone out there with binge eating disorder or go to food for comfort. I know I am one person in there. You'll read that a little bit in the book. It's very diverse, from a ballet background. Touch, feeling, leisure activities, sensual delights, the senses. Smell. Does the person always wear cologne, or does that turn you off? Or, all kinds of stuff. Physical touch. Some people like, a little bit chubby kind of person because it's, they're more huggable. And some people aesthetically, maybe the more super toned and maybe bony-ish people, maybe that's how they find themselves attractive, but maybe a partner will be like, it's too masculine for me, like on a female, or she doesn't look healthy, whatever. The eye, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. It is our social grace. This is very like Libra, you have to be kind of charming and pleasant, and the tone of voice that you use or the way that you say things, it's not like super mean or critical or angry. It's kind of like icky to the kind of Venus energy. How are we diplomatic with other people and respectful? Think hospitality stuff like hotels, restaurants. These are people who, even if they do not like the way the customer or the person is approaching them and talking to them, or like, why are you yelling at me? I didn't do anything wrong. I'm just a freaking receptionist. I'm the person on the phone, and you're lashing out at me and I didn't even do anything wrong. They still have to have the strength and calm demeanor to be very, try to like ease things down, de-escalate a very unpleasant, energy that is being encountered, and try to calm them down. Like, I'm going to try and solve your problems. It's okay. What is going on? Let me see what I can do for you. Okay. That is very Taurus, Libra, Venusian energy, dealing, de-escalating and rebalancing, unpleasant situations. That is Venus. Our Venus is also our affection style, our like physical wants and needs, as well as possibly ourselves, the verbal ways that we express, and how we show love, or how we want love to be received, as well as how we tend to give it. Venus also rules money and resources. That's why Venus is like a very important planet, because it rules kind of a lot of stuff. In order to have nice things or go on nice dates and have, cashmere sweaters and cologne and perfume and cute outfits to look a certain way, or makeup, and be able to afford a haircut and all this stuff, like you usually have to have money, and in our society, we kind of revolve around currency, even though at the end of the day, if money didn't exist, the main things we need to kind of look out for is water, food, shelter, medication, and possibly armory or like self-defense things. If the world is still a crazy cuckoo bird of people who don't know how to live harmoniously with each other, then you're going to need that. or you're going to still need that, or you're going to have to self-defense yourself against a really hungry tiger who wants to eat you instead of a deer or something like that. So yeah. So Venus is also like how we attract money and resources from other people, as well as our spending habits, how we tend to spend money on things, or are you an impulse shopper, wants and needs. When I hear from people who are like, oh, I need this. And I'm like, you need that? You definitely do not need a $300 Labubu, okay? You don't need that. You want that. There's a difference. Venus rules our value system. What do you actually value? And when people, get into, I don't think people get into discussions about this, but you can get into a debate about what is actually valuable, what is valuable to you, because that is going to be different for people. So those are things that you have to dig into when you are exploring somebody new, as well as, are they being honest? Do they actually do what they say? Do they actually value what they're saying, or they're just trying to pull one over you, or trying to people please in order for you to like them, and all these things? You have to use a lot of discernment. But what do you value? Because if you don't even know what you value, you're more likely to respond in a way to be like, oh, yeah, I think, I value that, I guess, yeah, it's the same. But you might not have thought about it that deeply, or you're just going along with it because it just sounds good. And that is something that you have to really learn how to ask the right questions, because if you don't ask the right questions, you're not going to get the answer, and that might come with, how long have you lived? What kind of experiences have you already gone through to now? Now your value system has changed. And now, after all the crap that you've been through in the past, you are now going to ask certain things earlier on to prevent devaluing yourself, because if you love yourself, why would you keep entertaining someone that makes you feel bad or hurts you, or your alignment on how you spend money or your lifestyle just doesn't align, and no matter what you do or try and tell the person like, hey, whatever you keep doing hurts me, you knew, if you discuss this, you already knew that's how they were before. And if that keeps hurting you, and they don't want to change at all, they love living and spending that way, even if it seems kind of reckless or irresponsible or whatever, you might not be the best match. You're going to keep fighting, or one person is always going to feel hurt, like, oh, you make me feel really, you spin like this and it makes me so stressed. We don't have like millions and millions of dollars to do things like that. And the other person will, well, you might die tomorrow, so I'm going to spend the entire check, in one day, because why not? And money is always going to come back. So your belief systems and philosophies about how money is spent is just different, and so if you know that, no matter how attractive you are, how they make you feel, and the lifestyle they may give to you or whatever, if you're not willing to sacrifice or whatever it is, you're going to end up being hurt. And so why do you keep doing that to yourself if that's not a part of your value system, and if you're holding on to something like that, that says something about yourself as to why are you holding on to someone like that if something negative. I can't explain all the situations out there, and it depends, so why would you keep hurting yourself or putting yourself in a situation that devalues yourself? And if it hurts you, unless maybe you're a little bit too full of it and you do need to be dropped down a peg. Possibly, maybe it's unrealistic. You have perfectionistic ideals, in other people, and you have to kind of succumb a little bit lower to what your standards are because it's just unrealistic, and you might as well, buy a robot that looks exactly like you or the way you want it to be and programmed exactly the way you want it to. And hopefully that just does it for you, makes it happy. We're probably in a time period where you can do that, at least in the future. But I don't know how authentically happy you're going to be, in the long run, at least. Let's see. Venus also rules our relationship pacing, like how fast, slow, or balanced, it's going to be like a Venus in Aries is going to be so fast. I like you. I hope you like me, and we're going to make it work. And it's like instantaneous. Venus in Capricorn might be like a slow burn, it's a slow growth, slow burn. Do I trust you in order to open up? Do you seem like a stable and secure person who can provide for yourself or provide for the relationship too, or whatever? They're going to play out a little bit differently. Romantic ideals like fairy tale, like Pisces, or very pragmatic, like a Virgo. Artistic expression is Venus. Our magnetism for love and wealth. Our collaborative energy, because Libra is collaboration with another person who is not yourself. How do you do that? Your seduction style, like a Venus in Scorpio is going to be very deep, almost like intrusive, wants to get into your psychological psyche, which, maybe like a Venus in Leo or someone who has a 10 of Leo might be like, this is too much. We need to stay on the surface. We don't go to that uncomfortable depths of my childhood trauma, and I just don't want to go there. It is crazy. I want to avoid it. And Venus in Scorpio is like, I want to know everything about you and the skeletons in your closet. And why are you the way that you are? And that can be very uncomfortable to people. Like, whoa, like who invited you to do that to me? Venus in Scorpio people might attract sexual encounters, and they didn't do I have an invisible sign around my neck saying my body is for you? I don't want you to be around, go away, so that is also what are we attracting, or Venus in Scorpio. I'm using Venus in Scorpio because I have Venus in Scorpio. It may attract mental health disordered people, and you're like, what? God, why do I like these messed up people? And so learning how to discern what kind of messed up people can you handle in a healthy way that doesn't make you go down in a negative spiral. You can read that in my book, through my psychosis experience. So, Venus is also your self-worth, self-love. Do you love yourself? Why would you do that to yourself if you loved yourself? There's a basic question you can ask. It's the cultural influences, because in different cultures, there's certain ways that we may learn to express love and respect. Things that you do and don't do, because that's just part of the culture of what, creates harmony. And so in certain cultures, westernized cultures might need to learn a little bit more from really old, very rich cultures that have been around for a really long time, and try and implement the practices that may work for them. Maybe it'll work for you, maybe not, but something to look into, I guess. That's why international travel has benefits if you're able to branch off into, a culture that is really, really not yours, whatever you're willing or able to do. Venus is like our relational wounds, like how we interact with each other, because we don't always have the same Venus. Within your age group, you're probably going to have the same Venus sign as your peers. So you're going to mirror back, that kind of Venus energy, or, other aspects as well, like your North Node, South Node, your Saturn sits in there for a while, things like that. So you're going to have similarities in your little small age bubble or your generation. But when you branch out to people who are older and younger than you, their ways of showing and expressing love, or what they believe is attractive, is going to be different. So yeah, and then Venus is our love language, like affirmations, physical touch, gifts, acts of service, quality time. And Venus can be like a projection mirror, which all of us tend to be a projection of each other in our shadow self, our unconscious self. When people say, oh, I'm working on my shadow, that is no longer a shadow. You're conscious of what that is, so you can now work on it. Shadow is something that is like almost in the 12th house. The lights are off. It's not easily accessible. You're not aware of it. So if you're not aware of it, how can you consciously work on it? It's unconscious. Okay. Kind of going off onto another segment. This intro is going to be really long. So Venus can be like the economics of love, how we exchange energy, time, money, and attention in relationships. So maybe it starts off really good in the beginning, but over time, if you don't work on it, if you don't water the area that you want it to grow like a plant, or nurturing like a cute little puppy. I'm about to get another puppy. So cute. If you don't, nurture, the relationship or whatever, it's going to die. Like the living plant, if you don't water it, it's going to freaking die. You have to kind of always tend to it. And if you're not ready to do that, you're still working on yourself, it might not be the best time to get into a serious relationship. And hopefully, if you want a non-serious relationship, that you communicate that to the other person, because that's bad karma, okay? Venus is also like a boundary setter, because it's your value. It's like, I will not tolerate that, and I'm going to communicate that to you when it feels hurtful, or you're overstepping, someone's overstepping, almost like sexual harassment or rape, or anything like that. That like, no, you're not allowed to do that. I don't trust you. I don't know you. Well, you don't just have access to me because you bought me a coffee and now you get access to my body. Does that value add up? That doesn't make any sense, right? But there are people out there who is like, well, I bought you a meal, so, you should put out. You're like, no, so no matter what the belief systems are, there are boundaries, and some people don't know how to communicate their boundaries firmly. And there are people who do not listen and hear the other person when they're speaking their boundaries. They're like, oh no, they didn't mean it like that. They're just playing hard to get, and that's when things get really complicated, blurry, toxic, and you're diving into a really bad situation for all parties. Venus also shows how we feel desired, because some people will love it if you give gifts and being spoiled, and some people will be like, I really don't care, like it's just a lot of stuff, and they don't care about material stuff. They care about quality time and learning from each other or doing other types of things. Venus is not just love, it's diplomacy. So it's like, how do you reciprocate negotiate, compromise, and balance the needs of the people who are involved. Venus is our attraction field. I already mentioned this with like what you tend to attract. Venus is the shadow side of, like the shadow side of Venus can be vanity, entitlement, manipulation in love in order to get what we want, or using charm kind of as a weapon. You can even do, people do that even in non-romantic relationships. They do that in business, marketing, in order to like lure a person into buying their product, or choosing their service or company, like, oh, blah blah blah, or how they word things, to kind of make things blurry, or kind of woo someone in order to spend their money. It's that, positive or negative, it really depends on the person. Venus can be like a glue that keeps people together in a positive or a negative way. That is beyond passion. It's shared tastes, values, humor, lifestyles. And if the persons were not authentic in the beginning, they kind of lied, or just like, oh yeah, I can do that, but in the long run, they hate it, or they want to roll their eyeballs, like, oh, again, then why did you say that you liked it, in the beginning, so you could just get the person, but you don't like it. Just say like, it's okay, like I don't mind, doing that activity or whatever, going with you to that, but it's not something that I want to do all the time. Just verbalize it, and hopefully the other person is respectful enough to understand, and you work it out. It's not like, but that's not fair. If you love me, you should always do what I want, otherwise you don't love me enough, like that. That's not very loving, actually. That's like controlling. Venus and the body, Venus kind of also shows what kind of aura, physical body type, personality that the person kind of gives off, even though they are not that actual zodiac sign that you like, or just like the energy of it, maybe like a hint of what that person's Venus type they are drawn to, as well as in a synastry chart. Where are all these planets, entering in the other person's houses? It's kind of create, this like, what kind of energy are the two encountering together? So as a cultural change, lessons that Venus can teach us is like shifting from transaction type of relationships into reciprocity, blah, you know what I'm talking about. So like dating apps out there, the online dating may have made it a little bit more transactional. You read the short pamphlet and the little picture, of the person that you want to swipe, and if they don't match all these things, the height, the type of job title, blah, 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 then it's a no. You're going to bypass them instead of letting things naturally flow organically, whatever works for you. Because I know it's not as easy to meet new people out there, as in the old times, even though I'm not that kind of old. But yeah, it's, shifting our mentality of how strict are we getting, or how unrealistic are we really, when doing that. We might be omitting people in the beginning, or trusting what they put on the front page. But when it comes to their behaviors, follow through, how they communicate, you don't really see that, on that page, so then it'll just delete it, and then people get sick of it over time. rediscover courtship, slowing down, savoring connection, not giving yourself away so quickly, being putting yourself out and open, creating that tension that like you can't have easy access to this person so fast, kind of makes them maybe want to work harder for you if they're serious. And if they're not that serious, then that's already an answer. Or if they're not willing to respect, your boundaries or what hurts you and all that stuff, that's already an answer. Just leave it be. Like they've already omitted themselves if they, cross themselves off of your value system of yourself and what you believe in. So you can kind of, work with that based on your own personal value system. Value self-worth. So, in a cultural way, we should learn to value ourselves more first, instead of just kind of putting yourself last in order to desperately seek a relationship. If you don't have strong self-worth, self-esteem, and self-value, you're more likely to put yourself lower on your list and put someone higher who you don't even know, or give them excuses and allow them to take advantage of you. And when you do that in the beginning, you've already taught them how to treat you, and they're going to keep doing it because you didn't seem to have a problem with it earlier on. So, okay. So, learning to value yourself first, really knowing what hurts you, what you really don't mind, and that is being connected with yourself, your feelings, your emotions, because you can't really say what hurts one person hurts another, and being like a free-spirited floater that changes partners every day, be like, really doesn't bother me. Like if they feel a connection, they're just going to go with it. And when the connection kind of fades and it dies, then they don't have a strong emotional attachment and they can move on. It doesn't hurt them. But to the receiver, that can be extremely painful and hurtful, and they don't operate that way. They, are devoted to one person. They want to work on it, grow, and hold on to it for like forever. And being left out in the cold, ghosted, stonewalled, gaslighted, whatever the vocabulary word that's not nice is thrown in there, that can really devastate that person. So communication in the beginning and being realistic with how you approach this in the beginning is preventing unnecessary heartbreak earlier rather than later, when you're emotionally attached, especially females who get more emotionally attached faster. Culturally, like normalizing pleasure in healthy ways, so stronger boundaries, stronger self-control. If you're a male, practicing celibacy or self-control actually makes you a better performer in the bedroom, just so you know, because you were able to hold yourself for a longer period of time, so you can make the bedroom pleasures longer instead of, oh, I'm done. That lasted like 2 minutes, 5 minutes, and your female partner, if you are, what is the word? Male and female partnered up, she's gonna be like, what? That's it? So it's not going to be as enjoyable for her. And then you're like, well, I'm done. I already did the thing. So when you practice self-control and you're not watching porn all the time, stimulating yourself in that way. You're learning self-control. You can go out in society and being around a lot of really attractive people, and you can still control yourself. Then you're able to perform even better for your real lover, who's going to devote their whole life to you and actually make your life better, instead of running away from them or seeking attention and validation from other people, who is not that person. And then the relationship starts going down. And it's like, well, what happened? You were lovey-dovey with each other in the beginning. What happened? You no longer worked on it. That's what happened. You abandoned the relationship, and then you created distance and a toxic relationship and hurt. And now this, if we were talking about women, you cheated on her or whatever, of course she's gonna now go off and heal, become more of an independent woman, go buy a house on her own, go do all these things, on her own. That's why we see this cultural shift of very empowered women who can do everything. So it makes men feel like, well, what am I good for now? So men have to kind of catch up, and kind of reorganize what they're doing or what they're not doing, that is kind of putting them in this cycle of, self-defeat, because the women want you, okay? They want a protector and they want a provider, At the end of the day, I believe that women do want a provider. They want to provide for themselves, probably out of safety, because if the man ends up abandoning them and they're left with the kid or whatever, and they have to really rely on the baby daddy for child support, and they start doing all kinds of manipulative stuff to avoid paying child support, the woman, she has to keep feeding the kids, or she wants to take care of herself and stuff. And so you see a rise in independent women, and men just kind of plateauing, So there's this kind of, we need to reorganize the culture of how relationships work, and that will take time, but hopefully it can progress in a positive way. Let's see. Venus culture can celebrate diverse love styles. So like the 12 zodiac signs, there's like 12 love languages in this aspect, not just one. So just understanding that not everybody loves the same way that you do. And if you want to be with someone else, if you want a companionship for life, a best friend for life that you can share and grow and do the bedroom deeds with, more easily accessibly, then, you have to learn the other person's love language, otherwise don't be in a relationship, get a pet parrot or something like that. Way easier. Reframe beauty standards. How we see beauty, not everyone sees beauty as the influencer online who has a certain kind of look, certain kind of body surgery and all this stuff, or certain kind of dress style. Sometimes people see us like, okay, that's nice, but I want beauty is even deeper than that, beyond the surface part. And that's going to be different for everyone. And then culturally with Venus, how do we honor relationships as an art form? Because it always changes. It's like art, it's not, relationships are not an Excel spreadsheet, it's not 1 + 1 = 2. And it's that simple. It's just not, it's harder. Same when I train clients with personal training in the gym. When somebody does a squat, if I have 10 people doing a squat in the beginner's level, sure, they're doing a squat, but they're all doing a squat kind of differently. And I have to make adjustments of why do they feel it like this? Why do they feel pain here? What is a weak point? Why are their knees buckling in? They're rolling on their toes instead of on the back half and outside portions of their feet. They're leaning too far forward. Their abs are weak. That's why they do that, even though they try and try and try so hard. There are other things that we have to work on in order to get that squat to be more efficient and effective to add weight, So everyone does things a little bit differently, and sometimes it's not the person's fault. That is the way it is right now based on whatever happened to them in the past, or they learned incorrectly, or they didn't think of it that way. They didn't think of it that deeply because it's just a squat. It's like, come on, but there's way more to it, and so it's just like, how do we broaden our brain and belief systems of relationships are like an art, and that is very hard because everyone is different, so it's really hard, and it can be kind of scary to work with someone else because people are afraid of rejection. They want to be liked and all this stuff. Not everyone has looks going for them. Some people are not everyone is funny or charming. Not everyone has the words to, entertain or express themselves. It's just everyone has their own struggles. That's why knowing your Chiron and your Saturn placement are really important. Knowing your ascendant sign, which, puts the order of your whole chart in order, or blah, blah, is, it helps. All these things can help you understand yourself a little bit better. Encouraging vulnerability as a culture, because if you're able to express yourself without the fear of rejection or being ridiculed, bullied, embarrassed, publicly humiliated, all this stuff, if you have the courage and bravery to learn to do that, even if it's like a little bit at a time, because it doesn't feel secure. It feels very nerve-wracking, and, you want to protect your ego of like, I'm the best, and I'm not going to show the negative sides of myself because I don't want this person that I like to know all the bad stuff about myself, because that will turn the person off, and yeah, that's valid, but if you're more authentic, you're going to receive a person who is going to understand and be more compassionate and work with you if that is what they're willing to do, or they'll also expose themselves and be like, you're a piece of shit, that's not what I want. And thank God you found that out in the beginning instead of later, and so like they're right now telling you how they behave, how emotionally stable they are, how they're going to treat you, or what their beliefs are. And if that makes you feel bad, makes you feel lower, that might not be the most supportive partner to get stuck with, at least not at this phase of life that you're in, because I don't know how old you are, and hopefully you grow and evolve. But if you have someone kind of putting you down like that all the time, making you feel like shit about yourself, you are less likely to grow, get better, and evolve with someone breathing fire down your neck, and depending how they do it, because sometimes you need, constructive criticism, which doesn't feel good, in order to grow. But if the person authentically cares about you, like the intentions are true and loving, and it's like, I'm saying that not to be mean to you, I'm saying it because I care. And I don't think you're quite aware of it, but you're doing this again, and if it's something that you want to work on, you're like, yeah, I do that. Like, do you want it to be better, or this is something you're not ready for right now? Like, you're not in the mood, the mindset, a lot of crap is happening in your life right now to add another thing of suckiness to your life, maybe it's not the right time, and that person is going to show you who they are in the beginning. And so, it can be like, oh, wow, like, I'm glad I opened up and expressed something vulnerable, because I wouldn't have known that this person is going to actually have my back, and help me as a person, like your growth partner for life, your best friend, your companion, someone that you can come home to when you don't trust the other people out there in the scary world. But this person is going to kind of understand, as long as you are also willing to work on the relationship and be honest. Are you actually going to work on your flaws and whatever? Because if you don't work on your part, if you keep making excuses over and over again, if you don't change the way that you're communicating to your partner that you want to change, and it keeps dragging on and on and on, that other person who is so supportive and patient for you, they're eventually going to leave you, because, it's starting to be a drag or become really draining. It's putting them down. It's making them change who they used to be, and they used to love themselves. And now you brought them lower, in order to match your level of self-esteem and self-worth, instead of you trying to rise up to their standard of self-worth and self-esteem, and being patient enough for you to get there. And they had to come down to kind of help you keep coming up, while they still maintain and hopefully still also grow. So it's like a dance or a balance of the two. And that's going to determine, is the relationship going to work in the long run or not? So, and no one can really, really determine that besides the two people in the relationship. Even if you go outside of the relationship to ask for advice, make sure you talk to the actual person that you're in the relationship, what's going on, not all these other people who have no idea what's really going on or how the other person feels in your relationship on how you need to approach the relationship. You need to just talk to the person you're in the relationship with, because that is just insane. Venus in a cultural change way, integrate money and love with awareness, because Venus rules money, and we know a lot of couples, they fight about money all the time. How do you spend money? When you make a big purchase, do you communicate and talk to each other about it? Or you're like, I'm the one who made the money, so I don't care about what you think or whatever. We're going to buy the couch like this, or we're going to decorate the house my way because that's the way I want it to be. That's not very loving. You have to coexist with someone else who has to also enjoy the environment. You have to come to an agreement. And what your value is on a house, if you are going to buy a house, what size, how big or small, is it realistic? Does that leave room for your lifestyle, travel, education, activities, entertainment, or are you going to be house broke? How do you allocate, extra savings? What makes you both feel safe and secure? Does anyone have spending habits, shopaholism, gambling, addictions that will take away from the home team, so to say, because eventually that's going to hurt the partner, and if you're not honest, you get like sneaky behavior. Someone opens a new credit card under their name to, hide statements from the other. Yeah. Or participating in like wild exchange clubs when they never told you that after like being married for 10 years, and it's like a huge surprise, and you trusted the person the entire time, and this was a huge slap in the face. Or you allocated money to your kids' college funds, and after 20 years of being married, you never even thought to check all the time, and you just trusted because Why would you be in a relationship that you don't trust? And you realize that all the money is gone, for your kids, and you put money towards that as well. And now what happened? Like all of these crazy things happen to people. And, it is not fun, and it's really hard. And if you have ever gone through something like that, I really empathize with you. It's not like I can solve your problems or anything like that, but, I am aware that shit happens. So that's why I like to promote a cultural change in how we approach relationships earlier on to prevent unnecessary torment, later on, and that is my 1 hour, oh my God, intro. So the next segment is to the zodiac signs, Venus and through the signs. So catch you later. My name is Natasha. Please like and subscribe if you find my videos, my very long videos, informative. Okay, bye. Okay, this is the long version for Venus and Gemini, and this is Nemo, and he is 10 weeks now. 10 weeks and very squirmy. Oh, I have to have good reflexes. Yes, he's a little bit bigger, if you can tell. Maybe you can't tell in videos, so yes. But he's playing really well with his big sister Yuki, and he's a good boy. So Venus in Gemini is a mutable air sign. It has to be super stimulated. Gemini's natural ruler is Mercury, and Mercury also rules Virgo. Oh my God. Fine. Don't show yourself to everyone. I'm sick of it, Mom. Venus and Gemini is think constant stimulation, wants to constantly learn, constantly curious, so it's like the little, I don't know, what is the age that little kids ask you questions every 2 minutes, during a movie, and you're like, just wait. Like, okay, what is that? Why did he do that, Mom? Why did he do this? And asking questions literally every 2 minutes during a major movie, and you can't always stop and explain why. It's just you have to be patient and just sit and listen. And they're just like, oh, why would you do that? And I don't get it, and well, I don't know. Why did the bad guy do that, Mom? I don't know yet, because I have to sit and watch and learn first, So super curious, very stimulated and wandering, and it is an air sign. So all of the air signs, Gemini, Libra, Aquarius, tend to love conversation, good conversation, and being mentally stimulated, and may come off as very aloof and kind of huh? They don't get it, or they might not pick up on clues that you're in love with them or something like that, because they're just always on to the next thing, curious about whatever is interesting to them, because they're just trying to learn. And they can be very charming because they know how to socialize. Think of Gemini as, the light-hearted conversations, or, almost like pickup lines, how to start. That's what I think when I think of just Gemini energy in general. It's like, oh, nice shoes, or, oh, where'd you get that outfit? I really like it, or, nice nails, or, oh, that's a sweet car, or whatever. And they seem to know a little bit about everything, because, they know how to start conversation, keep conversation alive, and they seem to, know the scoop on stuff before other people, know it. They know the gossip. They know what the new it thing is. They know the new trend, probably earlier than some of the other zodiac signs who might not care as much about it. So they know what's trendy, what's in style, what people are talking about behind other people's backs, and what people think about other people and why, or, how people behave, and, how it kind of attracts or repels, a certain person or a group of people. And they kind of get the inside scoop by being able to have their own kind of personality or their own interest or beliefs, and still listen to the other side. So it's mutable. It's not like a fixed sign like Aquarius, air sign. So it's able to change. Like the mindset or what you learn, what you believe. Like they can change their mind. Like, oh, like I thought, I read this book or whatever, and, I took it so hard or whatever. I believed in it 1000%. And then they read this other book, which kind of created a debate with the other book, like they called them out, the other author or whatever, on their beliefs or how they were coming up with their theory or whatever it is. And then they're like, oh, I never thought about it that way. That is very interesting. Or, that does make a lot of sense. Or I can see that making sense in this or that scenario or whatever, or the direction that we're going. This other guy makes sense now. And the other one is like, I'm not sure anymore, so it's changeable. So it's always constantly learning and being moldable, and still trying to form their own beliefs, but then also being open to what the other person has to say. So that can give, a Gemini energy in general, this, it's the two-face, it's the happy and sad face. It can get a bad rap about being manipulative or two-faced, but it's kind of a good thing, because you should be able to keep your own beliefs and what you've learned and researched and gathered, while still hearing and listening and trying to figure out what is going on with the knowledge that is kind of all around you, and so they can be very charming. And so whoever you're talking with, or the Gemini in Venus is talking to, that person, if we're talking about romantic relationships, this other person will be like, oh my God, the Gemini and Venus person is talking to me. They must be in love with me. Maybe they have a codependent kind of thing going on for them, or nobody talks to them, and, they feel super special that this popular Gemini person or Venus and Gemini person has taken the time to talk to them, like, and showed any kind of interest in them. They're like, oh my God, whoa, oh my God, the Gemini talked to me, so pretty, so handsome, so popular, so whatever, and then they're like, ooh, they must be in love with me because they talk to me, because they have maybe an unhealthy attachment or belief system, and then they might want to cling on to the Gemini person, and then when the Gemini person was just like, oh, I just wanted to get to know, I like to get to know everybody. Like I get to know 100 people a day. Maybe that's very unrealistic, but I want to talk to 100 people a day, because I love people, and people are so fascinating and so weird, and they do all kinds of crazy stuff, or they do all kinds of occupations and things like that, or they have good and bad things to say about their work or their family or all this stuff. And I'm learning all kinds of things that I don't learn in school, so if they're talking to a personality who is not like that, and they have maybe like unhealthy attachment styles, or they fall in love really hard and fast, like a Aries Venus, or, maybe kind of, or maybe Aries and Scorpio, and kind of, oh, you are mine, you are it, and we're going to be together, even though we've known each other for 5 minutes. The Gemini person's going to think you're a cuckoo bird, you're cuckoo crazy, and we'll have no idea. And we'll be on to the next person to get to know, because they're just trying to get to know as many people as they want, as well as like, oh, do I like this? Do I not like this? Do I like this? Do I not like this? Oh, I think I like this. I'm like, oh, I don't like that, and it's like, what is going to work for me? Like it doesn't, that doesn't make sense in the long run. So no, don't bother with this person. So just forget that. Let me move on to the next one, or just moving about their day. They're not even thinking about relationships, and the other person is like, I just want a relationship because I'm so bored and lonely. Then that person who is not like the Gemini person will be like, oh my God, you're talking to a new person or whatever. You're a bee, or you're manipulative, or you're kind of like, I don't know, you're just like, you led me on, and did all this stuff, and you're actually like this, that, or whatever, like whatever mean vocabulary words you want to put in there, like trying to trick me, she's a cheater, whatever. And nothing was actually discussed that you're even dating or in a relationship or anything like that. It was just like jealousy or, feeling rejected and all this stuff, So Geminis can get that kind of bad rep of being so charming and sociable with a variety of people that other people, it kind of creates this, expanded thing that the Gemini person may have no clue what's going on, like people talking behind their backs, or like this person is talking to this person, or she was like liking this guy one time, and then now she's moved on to the other guy. Like she's kind of like, she gets around really easily or whatever, and all this stuff. When the Gemini person goes home and just cuddles with their dog and doesn't hang out with anyone or whatever, they're just actually just trying to get to know people before they make a decision, and that can make them look kind of bad or flighty, and sometimes they don't stick with a person or a group of people because it was just not stimulating enough and it fell kind of flat. Doesn't mean any of the persons involved were bad or mean or rude or anything. It's just, it didn't stimulate the Gemini person enough, And what are you going to do? If you're trying to get a Gemini Venus to fall in love with you, you have to just naturally be so fascinating to that Gemini in Venus person already. Otherwise, they might fly away. I don't know. It's going to be hard to pin them down. So if that's going to make you feel really sad and you can't take it, or you're really attached to them, you have to ask yourself, why am I so attached to this non-committal person? Or why am I so attached? Or I'm like in love with this person that I only, I have a crush on them, and they're so desirable or whatever, so charming. Those might be traits that you love in the other person, that it's really hard for you to do yourself or embody yourself. So there's this longingness to be kind of like the persona of the other person. You don't even have to be a Venus and Gemini. That's just relationships in general. That's why I like people to know about their rising sign, because whatever your rising sign is, it's going to tell you usually what your seventh house is ruled by. And some people have duplications or intercepted houses, so theirs might be a little skewy. But if you have a house ruling each one of the 12 zodiac signs one-on-one, then most likely, it's going to kind of give you some kind of clue as to who you kind of are attracted or drawn to, because that energy feels further from yourself. you know? And so we tend to just like, why, what is it about this person that, or it's like a pattern, and that is your seventh house because it's the furthest away from yourself of what you kind of are or what you embody. And you kind of want to learn from this person, you know? And so that can play a huge part in your relationship sector, as well as the Venus, you know, what is your love style? Whether that is yourself or the person that you're like, why does that person want me? So, well, they just need something stimulating all the time. I don't know what it is, you know. They need an activity or something that kind of fills that void for them. So this way they can be with you. Because in the long run, your romantic partners, that's kind of hard to have conversations or deep conversations all the time, every single day until the day that you die. If you believe in monogamy or believe in, you know, this is going to be my partner, my ride or die until I'm 1 million years old, you know? So having conversation like that at that level, you have to be able to socialize, and hopefully both parties can do that because that's healthy, I think, you know, to at least be able to do that and interact with various people, whether you do that at work or whatever. So yeah, so Gemini, Venus in Gemini can be flighty, charming. They, you kind of know how to use their charm and their intelligence, or they know a lot of trivia, or they actually show interest in the person, so they're really good at starting conversations and keeping conversations going. So it makes people feel like seen or heard or wanted or good, like, oh, someone noticed me today, or someone, they talked to me today or checked up on me today, so that's like a very good trait with this sign, but if you're dealing with a person who has some unhealed baggage, and they see you socializing with other people and it makes them feel anxious or insecure because now they're worried, are you like a cheater, or you're going to do something, but they have some unhealed wounds, and maybe they don't feel safe to even talk about those things, or they don't have good communication skills, or they're afraid if they even bring it up, it's going to make them look a certain way or whatever. So that is something to kind of dig into in the beginning, or, right away. If you are starting to date someone, or you're already in a relationship with a person in general. But yeah, being curious about them, knowing your strengths and weaknesses, what you want to work on and evolve and all that stuff. I don't know why I'm going to that point. It doesn't really have anything to do with Venus in Gemini exactly. You can have, on a different note, you can have a love for kind of any kind of short distance traveling activity, so you like to go bicycling, you like to cycle or walk, take walks regularly, or you're a runner, you like to skateboard. You just love maybe driving. Maybe driving is like your escape and running away to someplace. You love short distance drives, like car trips. Or you don't mind living in an RV, small, compact, and you can always travel to a different city or place to just explore something new. And the different people who are in that city, anything close. I mean, I'm in the United States, so kind of the United States are more similar. If you're in Europe, for instance, it's still pretty close. I'm in Texas, so everything is freaking far. But in Europe, yeah, you can hop on the train or whatever, and you're in a different country. So that can also be like a Venus and Gemini kind of thing, is you love to kind of bounce around and travel, by train or bus. And it's not like flying for 12, 24 hours to Thailand or New Zealand or something that's much farther. And then you get to socialize with a variety of different people, different cultures. They like different kinds of foods, and you have a different way of living, and that is very stimulating in a different way. So it can be something like that. So short distance travel or some kind of activity that relates to movement. And it could be movement that is stimulating. So I'm wearing this rash guard. It's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu that I just started because I'm getting super stiff because I'm a personal trainer and I've done ballet. It's my background, but I stopped 20 years ago, and then bodybuilding and powerlifting. And so I've become more stiff. And so I have to say martial arts is like a movement, and it's sociable, or you're interacting with someone, or you interact with different partners. You kind of get to know them, or you get to know them in a movement sense. It's almost like Gemini and Pisces or something. Pisces is like kung fu a little bit, very flowy movement, and mutable also. It's a mutable water sign, and it's always kind of moving with the flow because it's always changing. Sagittarius is also a very mutable, fiery. Usually fire signs are more action and passion and all that stuff. So I think of Jiu-Jitsu. There are probably other ones that are similar where it's like strategy. So you kind of have to learn muscle movements, but then you're thinking more about strategy and not about muscling it or, just kind of using your ego. You're kind of using strategy to get out of a move. And so that is also it can be a Venus and Gemini thing because it's stimulating, you're interacting with people, and it's like a sociable thing, and you're having to be stimulated in a way of like, how do you get out of a situation, or how do you defend and all that stuff. So you can interpret it like that. Yeah, you ready? So it doesn't have to be necessarily always communication or gossip. Gemini can be about gossiping. I think in the short version, I kind of related almost all of the air signs, but especially Gemini. Think of the shows Gossip Girl or Bridgerton, where it's kind of like you're socializing in a group or community, and you kind of have the scoop or the gossip about who did what and what's going on, and other people don't know the secrets, and this is what's going on, and blah, blah, blah. And sometimes you're keeping a secret because you know something that you shouldn't be knowing, and you're interacting with people that you know a secret about, and so it can come off as this kind of two-faced thing. It's like, oh, so you're lying to me, or you're withholding information on purpose from me. Why? Or you're not taking sides because maybe, you feel bad for one person, but then you totally understand the logic of another person, but you don't want to say anything and defend the person who you actually agree with because you're buddies with the other person. And so you're very mutable with the group of people that you're with, or you might be passive. Maybe you'll be assertive, depends on what else is in your chart. Maybe you have a ton of Aries or Scorpio or something like that in your chart, which are more assertive signs, direct. So yeah, hopefully this gave you some insight to Venus and Gemini. I'm sure I left some stuff out that I'll think about later and be like, I don't remember if I put that in there or not. If I left anything out in this video, check out the shorter version of Venus and Gemini. Check out Nemo as he grows. Maybe you'll notice in the video if he's bigger or not each week, because there's 12 signs. It will be 12 weeks in addition to whenever I started him. And no. So check out my playlist down below, which everything is organized. The ascendant sign, Saturn, your north node, and Chiron are very, very important to know for yourself if you don't know them already or like to listen to my interpretation of that for you. You may pick up on new things that other people have not discussed that you can either use or just disregard. And please like, share, and subscribe, especially if you love Nemo. Because I love him. He's my boy. Nancy, bye-bye. Bye-bye, Gemini, Venus. Bye-bye. It's like, finally, so my mom can put me down. Okay, so check out my other videos, subscribe, check out my book. It's on Amazon. There'll be a link down below if you like learning and reading other stuff that you might pick up on also. It's like a real life story. And it also talks about relationships in there. And second half of the book kind of gets deeper into my psychosis episode, which is very fascinating. So, bye for now. Okay, bye. So high, so high, so high. All angels sing.